Before World War II, the majority of transit workers were men. Many believed that the railroad was a dangerous place for women. In fact, the very idea of recruiting women into the transit workforce was deemed as a long shot. But when America's men were called on to fight in World War II, women were called to work, and they worked hard. Elizabeth B. Johns was one of the first female conductors on the suburban Pennsylvania Railroad. However, it wasn't just the trains the women were called to work on, but the railroad tracks as well. Over the next several decades, women of different ethnicities became an asset to the MTA in various positions, such as executives, engineers, and motormen. Marion McAllister was not only the first female motorman, but the first African-American female motorman. It is women like her that have paved the way for many African-American women in transit.
I started out as a bus operator in service, and at that time there were not that many females out there. But it was an experience. From there I took a promotional to train operator, and in that I enjoyed being a train operator. It was like a totally new experience for me.
These new experiences for minority women in transportation also meant other full-time careers in some unusual places.
In order to even cross over from our traditional roles as secretaries and clerks and things like that, we must be willing to take the Pepsi challenge. We must prepare ourselves, we must be determined that we're going to work hard, and we must not let anything stop us. It takes hard work and determination in order to be a successful woman in today's world.
They started burning and welding and everything, and I was all burned up. I had on heels and stockings, and I liked it. And he said, "You're going to be a welder." I loved it ever since. And I really don't try to compete out here. I think a lot of the people try to compete with me when I first came out here because I am a woman. But they know I can weld. I can weld. I'm a first-class welder.
And transit is a good place to move up the ranks when you have goals.
Coming into transit in the late 80s, into contracts, going into stations, being the first female superintendent in track, then going into metro cars, and finally here at CES. So my journey here is a wonderful journey. I think opportunities for women in transit are great, but women have to apply themselves. They have to really stay focused, they have to plan their career out, they have to have a career pattern. They can't stay stagnant, they must move.
Some of the women started on a career path that brought them here to New York City Transit.
My first job was in the publishing world in college textbook editing. And while doing that, I found myself increasingly thinking, I don't want to be editing these things anymore. I want to do this work. So while there, I went back to school. I got a graduate degree in urban and regional planning, and then got a job at the New York City Transit Authority, actually, in the 80s. We have 4 bus garages in the Manhattan Division, and I oversee their operations. Basically, I think that my primary responsibility is to help the people who run those operations succeed. So it's my job to set a tone, set a direction, and then provide the resources that they need.
Some who already work for New York City Transit were encouraged by colleagues to not let gender be an obstacle.
At that time, most of the mentors were men. I mean, men who actually encouraged me to put in my resume and take the next step into management. And I got a lot of coaching from that side. So I'm very proud of the fact that New York City Transit does have people at the time and now men who are very receptive to the diversity, especially when it comes to women.
For some, their past experiences have helped shape them into the leaders they are today.
In 1993 or 94, I saved someone's life when I used to work the B8. I applied first aid that I was trained in the military. So I saved someone's life on 18th Avenue. The skills that I picked up in the Army have helped me in the Transit Authority as interpersonal skills, as a people person, going to different scenes.
And what is their advice to other women on their way up?
My advice to any woman, young woman who wants to succeed in the corporate world is to be persistent.
That you can be anything you want to be in this world. That nothing can stop you and you're not too old.
If you're interested in it, it's much easier to get over those roadblocks. You have a kind of a dynamic quality that makes you want to get over them, and it's much easier.
I came in as a civil engineer intern almost 28 years ago, right out of school. So I'm currently the Chief ADA Program Coordination and Co-Compliance Officer. My first boss, I came in, he didn't know what to do with me. So he said, well, my job was to water the plants. And I kind of turned around and I said, excuse me? 4 years of engineering school and I'm going to water plants? I don't think so. He soon found that I was no different than anybody else, and we got along splendidly, and I learned a lot under his tutelage. My mother, when she started engineering, she was one of the few in engineering, and even though she had a rough time in her career, moving from job to job, she encouraged me to do what I love, which is engineering. The best part of my job is knowing that whatever I do affects people, whether it's in a design and keeping somebody safe, whether it's being an advocate for the disabled community, whether it is making sure that the environment that our stations are in will be there for the next 100 years. That makes my day. Some tips for women. Persevere. If they say no the first time, keep going. If they say no the second time, keep going. If they say no the third time, keep going. Eventually you will find where you want to be.
Helen Cassidy was Transit's first female general counsel. She started as a file clerk and progressed to one of the city's top civil service attorneys. Joan Offner was the general counsel during the 1970s. In 1978, she played a key role in upholding the Transit Authority's refusal to hire methadone users. From the law department to law enforcement, women continue to play a significant role at New York City Transit. Teresa Coleman started with the NYPD 20 years ago on foot patrol. She moved up the ranks to become a sergeant before she retired from her position. Wanting to continue to serve the public, Teresa found her way to New York City Transit.
The advice that I would give the young ladies to come to New York City Transit Department, there are numerous opportunities and different directions you can go, from being a bus driver to being a manager to being an AGM, AGS. The opportunities are limitless when it comes to working with New York City Transit. Whatever you may want to do, you can do it.
What was one of the hardest things that you had to do as a New York City police officer?
As a police officer with working with domestic violence, one of the hardest things that I had to overcome was the female wanting to leave, but afraid because of their resources, not enough income, not enough money, and they're afraid that they won't be able to make it on their own. So even with giving them housing and relocating them, they would still come back and go to the offender. You know, it's very difficult when you're watching the same people come back over and over again, and then eventually I actually watched one person get killed in that process.
And how did that prepare you for your position here at the Transit Authority?
That prepared me for this job, and no matter how you think things are going to turn out, you have to be ready for the unexpected at all times. With the skills that I've learned at the police department, and that helped me to prepare myself for giving out assignments, assigning the personnel to the right position, letting personnel know that we're not the enemy. We're here to help them. And in whatever way we can enhance them to make them better, we're here to do that.
What advice would you give as to how to overcome the glass ceiling?
Education is the key to New York City Transit success. Educate yourself. You cannot fail with education, period.
New York City Transit Authority is a land of opportunity for women and minorities looking to apply their skills within the agency. I'm Trina Moore reporting for Transit News.